Hey, just a note that this episode was recorded on October 25th, 2015. We talk about a lot of things, and it took me so long to edit everything together that there have actually been a few developments in that time. So I threw in a quick addendum at the end to keep everything up to date. Anyway, we jump around between quite a few subjects this episode, including updates on Adult Swim Canada, the prospects for anime on Shomi and Crave, and a rundown on some of the new series that have been streaming this fall. So, let's get to the show. Welcome to Zonan Canada. Our dollar's just so bad. They got to take advantage of this.
Yes, really. I mean, this is how we ended up with so much dubbing up here in the first place, and a litany of syndicated television shows that these days will be, cable or Netflix or something.
Well, hey, I guess it remains to be seen whether things will improve under our new Bishounen Prime Minister.
Oh man, there's the lewdest tweets about that from Fujoshi Online.
Oh yeah, there's already a slash fic out of Trudeau.
Oh my god!
Yeah, they were talking about it on Radio 1 the other day, which kind of surprised me. But
to be fair, even the Edwards Carey campaign in 2004 had people writing fan fiction about it. So, I mean, if you're willing to ship that, Trudeau is a dream in comparison. There's our cold open.
Probably. Hey everyone, this is your host Jesse. Joining me today is Carl.
Yep, what's up?
And Brittany.
Hi.
So we're going to do something a little different this episode. We're going to be talking mainly about new shows that are streaming this fall on the various anime streaming services. But first, a couple things I wanted to cover. Last episode, we talked about the Love Live movie in Canada. We didn't have Brittany on the episode. I was just curious, Brittany, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share on that particular issue?
Other than my severe disappointment that I didn't get to see a bunch of cute girls dancing on a giant screen.
Or get the swag.
Were they giving out swag?
Yeah, that was
No!
There was swag for everyone in every country, but not here.
You know why? You want the real reason why? Because basically, as far as the rest of the world's concerned, Canada is in the U.S., and so they showed the movie in U.S. theaters, and obviously, that's close enough.
We're a blind spot.
Yeah.
Always a blind spot.
I'm just upset I didn't get to see my waifus on the big screen, so that's it. No, okay, because you play this game, and all they do is hit on you for 12 hours, and it's like, if I was straight to begin with, I wouldn't be by the end of the game,
Yeah.
I just want to see them on the big screen. Actually, you know what's really frustrating? Okay, because I actually did try, don't judge me, okay? Just don't judge me, preempting this. But I did try and get tickets to the Bolt movie, the last Naruto movie that was released in theaters. They sold out. They completely sold out, and they were only shown...
It was only showing in 2 theaters, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were only shown at 1 p.m. on a Saturday. That's it. There wasn't even a second showing like they had with Madoka. The fuck was that?
They seemed pretty reluctant to add those Canadian screenings. It was almost like a last minute thing. Yeah, it was kind of the same with the Iron Giant. I managed to catch the Iron Giant limited edition in theaters, but I didn't even find out about the fact that it was running in Canadian theaters until after the first showing was already done. I did manage to catch a second showing on the Monday night, and there was nobody in the theater I went to either.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, it was not publicized at all. It was by sheer luck that I happened to be Googling it and just stumble on a very obscure press release saying that, hey, we are putting this in theaters in Canada after all.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Just going back to the anime movies really briefly, these movies, you saw it with Madoka when those were released however many years ago. I was in Japan, so 2012, 13. And then with the Bolt movies, Love Live as well, they all sold out, right? Yeah. And the local movies that were shown in Vancouver, they all sold out. all sold out. Some of them even sold out within a day in terms of like Madoka. And I think Madoka, for the first movie, they only did the one showing. For the second movie, they did 2 showings, and both of those showings sold out. And I look at that, like, numbers-wise, and you can't tell me there's no profit to be made from that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that...
You think they could at least art house screen it for like a week or two? Give it a little bit.
Yeah.
Give it a little bit of breathing room, especially because it's like, people work. A lot of your target demographic that you'd probably monetize is, it's either very young college age people who are just generally busy, or people who typically anime tends to attract a fairly professional demographic. So again, may have trouble scheduling things in if it's a 1 or twice showing.
Somebody needs to convince the Cinematheque in Vancouver to give it like a prestigious 1 week.
1 week only.
Yeah, 1 week only. Just take the classiest route possible. I think it'd work.
It could, you know what, it probably could, because I know there's a really large Love Live community here, and it wouldn't surprise me even if they did just like 1 weekend only, 2 showings, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I guarantee you they'd make tons of money off of it. Yeah, like Rin Senpai pointed out last episode, it's like even in Vancouver, even people who aren't anime fans have heard of Love Live, which is kind of terrifying. But
that's not really how I want to introduce people to the culture. I want people to be like, oh, anime, you mean like Love Live? I was thinking more like Satoshi Kon, but damn, whatever. Well, I mean, it's from the game, right? Because there's that medium that most people don't get into anime through games. But the Love Live game, I don't know, I love rhythm games, and you get a bunch of cute girls hitting on you at the same time, so why not? It's a winning formula. Also, before we get to the main topic, I wanted to give a few updates on Adult Swim Canada, which, is not really super on topic for this show, but a lot of people who follow the show also like following updates on this topic, and it's also a topic that I like to be an armchair critic on in general. So I'm just going to cover a couple of things. There are some schedule changes coming up in November. The weekday schedule is still pretty much the same, but on Friday they're now premiering episodes of Forget About It in Napoleon Dynamite's spot. But don't worry, there are still plenty of Napoleon Dynamite reruns left. They still repeat it that night and then all throughout the weekend. But they're airing a new season of that, and they're also adding that ADHD show about the ducks, Stone Quackers, is going to be replacing Golan. Starting on November 6th as well. I'm just going to assume that's a downgrade because Golan's really good. Right? Golan's pretty good. Like, it started out as in the 11-minute format from the ADHD episodes, and then it kind of was retooled quite a bit in the full half-hour format. I think it gained some things and lost some things. Like, I kind of understand why they would bring big name actors like Audrey Plaza and Rob Riggle to replace the old voice actors for Dylan and Golan, but I don't know. Rob Riggle doesn't sit quite right with me as Golan, and Aubrey Plaza is essentially just doing an imitation of the old voice actress. It didn't really seem to have a lot of purpose. I mean, they're great. I mean, I think both of them have done other voice work, at least, but yeah, it does strike me as like, hey, it's 22 minutes and it's weird, and we put celebrities on movies all the time. Let's try it with TV show, which kind of gets around the whole point of being able to do an animated show, is you don't have to line up talent like this all the time. You do have the voice actor pool to draw from instead. Mm-hmm. I like how the focus shifted a little bit. They cut the dad out and made the mom a single mom, which kind of puts more emphasis on Golan and Dylan's relationship, and at the same time makes it feel less like a typical family comedy with just this weird monster living in the house with them. Right. It seems to have a little more focus on the central premise. It seems like, within its 22-minute runtime, a lot of the gags kind of fall flat or seem to come out of nowhere for me. I don't know. I can't decide which format I like better. It's kind of give or take. Did it get renewed for another season after the first short season? Do you know? I want to say that it's got a pickup, but let me double check.
Admittedly, I haven't seen anything past that little short season, but I like the little short season.
Yeah, like surprisingly, it gets more violent after it moves from ADHD to Fox. It's just like
More. I feel like they have more money to be violent with. Wiki doesn't say one way or the other. Wiki doesn't say one way or the other. They're saying 2015 to present, so I guess that assumes there will be more.
Yeah.
They did start Axe Cop season 2 after taking a 1-week break for some reason. So that is continuing, which is good because Axe Cop
so good.
So good.
I also just like the voice actor choices with that. Like Nick Offerman's obviously like a great go-to, but then to have like Tyler the Creator on as the tiger, like just like that's our lion. Yeah, thanks for putting my brain in a lion's body. Like that's just fantastic. Fantastic.
But they also added another show back on the 16th that I don't think a lot of people noticed because it was not promoted in any way. But there's a new show that airs just kind of at 11 p.m. after the main ADHD block on Adult Swim's lineup, and it's called Two Nuts and a Richard. So this show is actually a Teletoon original. It aired first on Teletoon La Nuit, the French channel. And it was originally produced in French, and now they've sort of dubbed it into English. Apparently, they had been intending to do this for quite a while, and it's just kind of stealthily been added to the schedule without any kind of emphasis or fanfare of any kind.
This is not good.
It is not good. It is not a good show. I'm not really gonna, kind of pick it apart or rant about its quality, because let's face it, Crash Canyon lowered the bar so much that all I can really do is shrug.
It feels extra inexcusable in the wake of all the great shorts that they've had on Night Sweats. Like, there's a lot of good ongoing bits on Night Sweats, and then to be like, but this thing gets 22 episodes or 22 minutes, and I'm like, I'd rather see like anything from Night Sweats get 22 minutes.
Yeah, I think the only thing on Night Sweats that hasn't really worked for me is Executioner and Friend. That one kind of falls flat, but all the others, I think.
I like it for the hyperviolence. Like, it's just like it knows exactly what it's doing. Like it's just grotesque. We don't care. We're going in.
Yeah, it's like,
I'd still legit 22 minutes of that, which would really probably be like tough to watch. Still, I'd prefer over Two Nuts and a Richard. Also, I feel like I get you're trying to like Two Nuts and a Dick, but you should have just said it. Like, I honestly, like, you're on an adult block. Just 100, go all in.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, the whole idea behind that show, Carl, did you actually manage to catch it at all?
I happened into it for about 5 minutes, and me and my friend Noli were watching, and we're just like, we can't.
Yeah, because the funny thing about this show is that the entire kind of creative conceit behind it is that they've taken all these recordings from old radio shows, and they just kind of, done bizarre animations set to these radio conversations. Kind of like, the Ricky Gervais show, how it's like an animated version of his podcast.
Well, and even that was kind of like, that's very similar to, there was that show on Comedy Central that was just animating the stand-up bits.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's an old way of doing this.
It's that kind of thing, exactly. So it's nothing new, but I mean, when you dub it into English, that aspect is just erased completely, because now you have these like staged translations of these conversations where the context is just gone completely.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Because I mean, like in Quebec, you could probably make the argument that it has some kind of like cultural significance to somebody. I don't know how popular the show is there. I'm guessing not very.
Honestly, this would be like dubbing Crank Yankers into another language. Like, why would you do that? The whole point is it's a prank phone call, and this is basically the same conceit. Like, it's like radio call-in stuff. So it's like, let me pretend. I need to act like I'm here in the studio. What are you doing? Where are you going with this?
Yeah, I also found it really weird that at least the episode I saw had a PG rating on it, despite the fact that it was actually pretty graphic and nasty in some parts. I know in the first episode there was like this weird scene where a woman gets her breast bitten off by a demonic baby, and it was just like, it was pretty gross. I mean, even if it's like really exaggerated, that's hard 14 plus at least. And then on the other hand, you have something like Axe Cop, which is running with a completely undeserved 18 plus rating, which, the fact that
that's like definitely the 14 range.
Yeah, well, the fact that you'd give AXCOP an 18+ rating suggests that you don't even really understand what the whole joke behind the show is, because the whole appeal behind the show is, because it's supposed to be like rooted in a child's imagination. Like, nothing he can come up with would actually warrant an 18+ rating. I mean, it just, I don't really care what they rate the shows, as long as they play uncut in the end, it doesn't really matter. But it just kind of gives this impression that the people running Adult Swim actually don't actually pay attention to any of their own programming.
They've never watched.
I'm not sure if there are any. I'm not sure if there is any standards or practices, because otherwise there'd be consistency. It's just like the producers told us it's this. Okay, ding.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, Canadian TV stations typically don't have standards and practices divisions, which is good. It's just good in some ways, because you can get away with more, but then you get these weird inconsistencies sometimes. I don't know. It just seems to underline the general laziness that still seems to be going into that block,
or it's just lack of resources. Like, it may be that it's like, this may be one guy really working hard, but the problem is it's one guy for a block that has its U.S. equivalent at least started with like a half dozen guys who were literally like the cream of their crop. Like, you think about early Adult Swim, and it's like, it's not just that you've got Lazo. It's that Lazo's there, DeMarco's there, Aka's there, all these other, Keith Crawford. Like, you can go down a laundry list of like this who's who that's involved with Adult Swim early on. Plus, the network still being run by Betty Cohen at that point. It's like a very charmed set of circumstances to launch a block in. So if it's getting anything less than that, of course it's going to come up short here.
I actually sent them some feedback through their Facebook page a while ago.
How did that go?
They responded, and thanks for your constructive criticism or like detailed feedback, and they said they do have some changes coming that you'll probably like. Who knows what that means?
Be nice if we got Rick and Morty, since Russia has it.
Yeah, Rick and Morty, up until like a few months ago, was only airing in the States, but it seems to be spreading to a whole bunch of different countries now. But it's interesting because Turner doesn't seem to want to launch it in any country without the Adult Swim brand attached to it. So that means makes it seem really unlikely that another network is going to pick it up here. But why isn't Adult Swim Canada running it? I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with getting a proper streaming platform up, which they're apparently also trying to do, but hasn't hit.
And that's another thing that they didn't have to worry about when they launched Adult Swim in 2001. What's a streaming platform? There had been one attempt at it, ironically by William Street, by the same branch that does Adult Swim down in the States, related to Toonami, but it was a debacle because it was way too early. It's all real media. But now that's part of your buy-in for launching television, and I can see where that's, might be difficult for Adult Swim Canada to do on its own.
Yeah, and they're not, especially since unlike a lot of the other countries like Russia and some of the European countries or Latin America, they're not starting from scratch. Mm-hmm. They kind of have to change their infrastructure around. It could be that they're waiting for another kind of shakedown to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney XD's launch in December is going to shake things up across all the networks. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. But again, we'll see what happens with that.
Wait, didn't Disney HD already launch?
Disney Channel did. Disney XD. Chorus,
oh, right.
Yeah, Chorus is launching their own Disney XD because the old Disney XD that DHX owns turned into Charged the other week.
Yes. Family Charged.
Oh
my god. Sorry, that's how it's spelled. It's spelled in Ermagerd language.
Exactly. Well, I think they're trying to like optimize it for search engines, but I think it kind of backfired on them.
It's a distinct spelling, so it rises to the top of those results. Otherwise, Family Charged might just get mixed in with a bunch of other stuff. So then you'd have to pay for expensive SEO to like boost you up in that, and you can get in trouble with Google for actually doing that. So you try and do it naturally by naming something unique, but this can backfire on you. And honestly, it's not like Family's the only one guilty of this. When Cartoon Network tried to be like, well, Toonami's not a kid brand. We'll create a new brand, and we'll just transpose some of the letters in the Japanese word for swimsuit, Mizugi, to Miguzi. And it's like, yeah, but it's still like Google autocorrects, and then there's just lewd results at the top. So SEO problems.
I remember Magoozy. It was a big mistake. But I think it was kind of the result of all the Toonami guys. All the Toonami guys had moved to Adult Swim, so Toonami got shifted to Saturday night, but they weren't handling it anymore. So,
well, it's a mess. It was a mess of stuff, and it was just part of that micromanaged era of Cartoon Network when, after Betty Cohen left, they had like a litany of different people, and really what they should have done is just said, Mike Lazar, the whole network, not just Adult Swim, is yours, whether you like it or not. And he running the whole thing would have probably been a better position to put other good creatives in the management. But instead, he's like, I've got my fiefdom. I've got Adult Swim, and I don't blame him.
Well, that gave them that's what gave them the leverage to make Adult Swim into its own network rather than just a blog too, which has paid off well for them. So, moving on, there's a few updates regarding English dubbing for anime. Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, the new Gundam show, which is running on Daisuke and Crunchyroll right now. It's confirmed to be dubbed by Sunrise. How they're going to distribute the dub has not been announced yet. Presumably it's going to be some kind of streaming release. But interestingly, it's confirmed that it's going to be dubbed by Bang Zoom in LA, meaning that this is actually the first mainline Gundam show that's not being dubbed in Canada. Which I find disappointing. I don't care. I don't know if anyone else cares.
I feel it's a missed opportunity. I mean, so far. I mean, like with Gundams, you're gonna have to wait for the whole thing to say whether it would really be a good candidate for broadcast. But so far, I feel like, man, this gets off. This is a more interesting setting than a lot of Gundams have. It feels like it's kind of got a bit of Cowboy Bebop's sense of space colonialism and futurism, with a bit more of a Gasaraki sense towards mech fighting. It's like real, it's practical, barring like the Gundams themselves. Which, okay, that's your more super robot part of this. It just feels like this would have been a good candidate, or would be a good candidate to get on TV somewhere here. And it would, and if it worked here, you'd probably be like, I could see of Gundams recently. I feel it's probably better positioned for Adult Swim than other ones, but you don't have to dub it. But you don't have to dub it in LA to get it on Adult Swim. You would ideally dub it up here to get it on Adult Swim Canada.
It helps, but of course there's no precedent or reason for it. I say that this is the first Gundam show in years that I think seems like it would work perfectly on Toonami. We have this tendency to think that, there has to be a Gundam on TV because, Gundam Wing was one of the first shows to sort of hit. There's really no reason why any Gundam show should ever have to be on TV, but this one, I think, just based on its own merits, regardless of the fact that it's connected to the Gundam franchise, I think this is a show that really has a chance to grab people through broadcast. Personally, I would have described it as, Gundam 8 Them S Team meets Free.
You only say that because there's a lot of Bishounen guys in it, but I almost feel like
specifically Bishounen guys not wearing shirts while they're piloting their Gundams, which I thought was a brilliant touch because they're in the middle of the Mars desert and it's probably really hot. It looks really hot, and I guess
maybe after terraforming it is.
Yeah,
maybe we can't know to know.
Yeah.
I think the bigger part of that though is that you're talking. I mean, the part of me that really reads like Saraki more than even Eighth is realistic as Eighth. Put it this way, I think the Gundam fighting will be like the Gundam fighting in Eighth, but it looks like there's a lot of mech fighting here that is like construction mechs and like workers mechs type stuff, and that's much closer to the Patlabor. And then because of the desert setting, Gasaraki model of these are machines. They are used for day-to-day shit. They can break. They are not, convenient. These, like they're construction equipment. And there's a sense about that from square one in this show that is very different for a lot of, like, especially recent Gundam. Like, you do have to go back to Eighth before you see anything that, annoyingly pedantic as this is what war is really like. And it's not really that cool. There's a lot of, like, bullshit, and these things are, they're tanks. Shit breaks.
I know that they usually say that, for people who have seen a lot of Gundam, typically your favorite is either going to be 8th MS Team or 0080. Personally, I'm in the 0080 camp. I was a little let down by 8th MS Team.
I think it does kind of lose the thread.
Well, on one hand, I mean, it's very obviously oriented towards war nerds, and I've never really liked that kind of angle. I know people really appreciate the fact that it's like, trying to be as realistic as possible, but that usually leads to people scrutinizing it even more and holding up to an even higher standards of what is, realistic for a show about giant robots. But I mean, the show did handle that element quite well. Going back to it now, it's like really super 90s. But I think that Iron-Blooded Orphans really hones in on the exact essence that makes 8th MS Team work.
I feel like it's also kind of getting some callbacks into like other Gundams of yore in its way as well.
Oh yeah, it's got like the Band of Misfits, which goes back to Double Zeta, which is awful, but I mean, it has a good. It introduced an interesting conceit that is being done better here, because it follows that theme of having like children who are essentially human garbage. Not to mention that the lead writer is the same lead writer of Anohana, so you can tragedy is definitely guaranteed.
But no, it's a strong show. There's a lot of mech shows that are slow burns. They don't grab you out of the gate. They don't do a good job of giving you intros to the characters out of the gate. You don't, you get a good vibe for people from square one here. And that's impressive considering like this is going to run this isn't a one season. This is going to get a full,
they're actually saying two core 26 episodes for this.
Yeah,
so
26?
Only 26.
Maybe that's why they're not messing around.
Yeah,
because it feels like definitely when you give a Gundam 50 episodes, they use it.
Yeah, but no Canadian dub for that one. So a few people will shed tears, I guess. Maybe it's not as big a deal as I thought.
It'd be nice to see that not be a determinant. It'd be nice to see like, oh, this is a good anime. We're gonna get it on television here.
Also, there was another interesting piece of news regarding Canadian dubs. Funimation, apparently, people have been bugging them for years to outsource one of their dubs to Canada. And apparently they did. There is a show called Kingdom, which is sort of a historical drama series that apparently kind of stilted, but it did well enough to justify getting a physical DVD release, I guess. It looks like Funimation sent the dub out to get dubbed by Blue Water. Apparently the results weren't too good, because this is the first time, or one of the few times that Funimation has released a DVD with a dub, but the dub is not the primary track on the release. It's actually going to be the secondary track.
Wow.
It'll default to Japanese with English subtitles.
Well, what's interesting is I'm looking at the wiki page here. It says that the second season hasn't been picked up yet. I'll be curious to see what happens at that point. Like, if Funimation does get it, do they send it back out again? Do they bring it back in-house? I mean, I think it's the other thing is it's a 38 and the next season's a 39, and it feels like Funimation they've already got some longer running stuff, and that may have been another reason they kind of, we'll try an outsource on it, and it's not that they can't do good work, but maybe this isn't something that they're gonna like hit out of the park.
Well, my concern is that if this actually went so badly that they're not going to make it the primary track on the DVD, that they're not going to ever consider doing this again, which would be disappointing.
I don't think it would be that far, but I could see them maybe like, if they're going to try Canada again, they'll try Canada in another place first. They'll try Vancouver, or I guess that's really in terms of known quantities.
Yeah. Our dollar's just so bad. They got to take advantage of this. So, unfortunately, so there's been a lot of new shows this season, but there's also been some new instances of Canada being geoblocked from a few shows. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be anything particularly good, but it does set a couple of unfortunate precedents. This isn't a new show, but Parasite's been debuting on Adult Swim in the US, and the dub episodes are being released on Amazon as they air, which unfortunately means that we, as usual, have no way of watching the dub until the actual physical release happens, which is understandable, I guess, but it would be nice if they threw us a bone in some way with that.
It hurts more because it's not just that Amazon has retail operations up here. They do have dev operations up here, and they are expanding them. So like their own employees who are, working on cloud services and stuff and the things that then underpin their video streaming and stuff, can't like, I'm sure the company's like, you can watch this stuff for free. It's like, I can't because you've geoblocked it. So when I get home, unless I VPN, which yes, I could totally do. Like, I imagine that their own employees do not get to get the fruits of their labor on some of this stuff, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially because, I mean, I know for a lot of how Amazon works, Canada is not the most ideal market. But it's 40 million people, and for the purposes of digital, just make things happen.
Well,
like, if you've got North American rights for it, just open the doors.
It still baffles me that Amazon chose to go to Japan before Canada, because I know Japan is a really important market when you're trying to expand towards Asia, but it's such a hard market to break into because it's just
a hard market to break into, but it's for a lot of the other stuff that they're doing convenient, and they've had good success as an online retailer there.
But I mean Netflix just launched there a couple of months ago, and I mean, they dramatically lowered their expectations of how things were going to go in Japan compared to other countries. And, from what I've been reading so far, I mean, it hasn't completely failed, but it definitely hasn't surpassed those expectations at all. Just because, the Japanese public, for the most part, doesn't really seem to be interested in streaming. Like, a lot of the time, they're more than just happy to watch those same 7 TV channels that they always watch.
That's true. I noticed that while I was living there.
I think part of it is, well...
That's true. Like, whenever I was at homestay, or if I was visiting friends and the TV was on, they had, I don't think they had more than 10 different channels.
Yeah, it's about 7 or 8 channels depending on where you are in Japan. And
I think
hardly anyone even has cable or satellite in Japan.
I think part of what it is that Netflix works, and its competitors, Amazon and so on, for streaming, work because you go from having all of these cable or satellite channels to then cutting that cord and then just going to nonlinear. But if you were never attached to the cord to begin with, and the costs of that to begin with, if TV has always been an over-the-air free thing for you, the impetus to change that is dramatically different.
Oh yeah, the idea of cord cutting doesn't even really exist outside of North America. It is totally a Canadian and United Statesian thing. We're the only countries where this notion that you're trapped or you're handcuffed to your cable or satellite provider exists. I mean, this is true. You don't have these sort of like regional lock-ins that you get in North America, but you still have the lock-in of you're paying for a service necessarily in some of these other places. Oh, I'm going to add cable or satellite even in Europe. You could choose at least who you're going to get that from, and thus it was never as expensive. But that's still you're going to buy into linear television, and it's like, well, if I'm going to buy into something, I'll buy into nonlinear television through streaming services. But if you simply weren't really buying into TV, it's harder to say like, well, now spend $8 a month to get this. It's like it might be a little. I mean, that might be part of it. Is it's you're not. There's a set of psychological transfers you're not going to be able to make, or you're going to have to approach it from an entirely separate angle. I have to admit, I've never really had a chance to use Amazon Prime streaming, so I don't even really know how it works. I know that as a combination of streaming and purchasing.
It's pretty similar to Netflix. It's the same.
But since it's kind of like Netflix meets iTunes from what I've noticed.
It sits in between those.
Yeah, but it that's the problem with something like iTunes is that distributors can kind of become comfortable like only releasing something on that format because people will purchase it and quote unquote own it. But then you still have these regional restrictions that don't exist with physical media, because at least with physical media you can import it. I mean, this has kind of become a problem with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because you can import the DVD of that, but if you want to watch that show like in HD and dubbed, there is no option for that in Canada because it was only released that way through Amazon in the United States.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's one that doesn't, from an infrastructural standpoint, and from a rights standpoint, since they're probably buying it carte blanche, like English North American rights, unless they're really negotiating some oddball contracts, in which case we should all blame Crave for not picking up JoJo's. because it's available if Amazon didn't grab it for the whole continent.
Well, that's the thing with Shomi and Crave is that they don't.
Yeah.
Neither of those services carry any anime right now, apart from Pokemon, which is on Shomi.
It's a huge gap. It's a huge gap because you know what? If you're going to try and be a Netflix competitor, Netflix has a just ton of anime.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention you have Crunchyroll.
Yeah, exactly. Well, neither of you have Shomi or Crave, right?
No.
No. See,
I wouldn't spend the money on that.
I'm not sure if anybody in Canada is going to spend the $4 a month for that. Frank,
some people do.
I don't know how that's doing for.
It's not doing like.
I would like to meet the man I'd like to meet the person who subscribed to Shomi.
Some people do. I mean, it's from the numbers I've seen, Shomi is doing a little better than Crave, but you know who really knows in the end. I've sort of resisted Shomi on Crave, and I've sort of resisted promoting them as possibilities for anime streaming as well, because sort of the idea behind these services is that the cable providers have created them not as a way to compete with Netflix, but as a way to snatch the rights to things away from Netflix so that they can't get the Canadian rights.
Yeah.
Essentially trying to kill the service. At this point, you know, a year and a half since Shomi and Crave launched, it's pretty clear that Netflix is not going anywhere, and that their plot probably isn't going to work out, and that if Shomi and Crave are going to stick around, they're going to have to make it work. And the only way I can really see making those services work is, you know, well, one, get rid of one of them because this market isn't going to be able to sustain both for very long, and two, try and become the Canadian Hulu.
Well, become the Canadian Hulu, and if Amazon's going to just keep ignoring the market, pursue the content that they're commissioning. Be like, look, if you're not going to push your Amazon original up here, we'll make it available. And then also, you know, push the stuff that, again, they didn't commission, but they bought, but are only pushing in the US, and be like, hey, if you're not going to push if you're not going to push JoJo's up here, we'll take it. We'll take anything that you've bought and aren't pushing in Canada. You know, be that gap filler so that the people who are cutting the cord are like, well, shit, I guess I've got to buy this because they're filling that gap in this market, as opposed to being like, instead of trying to create a hole, find the ones that are already present and pursue them and own them.
I don't know if they did start carrying anime, would that convince either of you to get Shomi or Crave?
No.
No?
but no, can I say, I think something that makes a really big difference is I'm at home, right? I live with my mom, and I may like put money towards rent, but I don't put money towards cable. Cable is free in my house, right? If I was living on my own, would I pay for cable? No, there's no way in hell I would. So I'd look to an option like Shomi or Crave or Netflix. But at this point, it'd probably be Netflix because Netflix does cover all the genres and all the markets, including anime, which I may not want to watch all the time, but I want the option to be available to me.
Yeah, I think if I wasn't getting cable as part of my rent, I would be maybe looking at it. But I'm also tech savvy enough that I'd have to weigh it against setting up a VPN in the US, because I could go all in with my setup on that. And I think, I mean, the problem is I am guaranteed an outlier consumer by virtue of my background. I can't say how it's going to work for the average Canadian that would be like, VPN? Is that the new MP3? And you're just like facepalm. Like, that's just not, I'm not that guy. And I think I think that's part of what services probably like Crave and Shomi are looking at. Is just that, you know what, we're not going to get the people who are bright enough to get around this. Like the people who are willing to go gray market, let alone, you know, the black market stuff, like you're not going to sell them. Because even if they look to go legit, they'll look for what's the best possible legit option. That isn't, you know, if going to not be a pirate, they may still be like, but I'm going to use American Netflix and I'll, you know, get a prepaid credit card for Hulu or, you know, Amazon purchases over VPN and whatever else. Like they'll get around it in other ways and not have this. I mean, frankly, at this point, I mean, there's no original content being created for for Shomi or Crave, they're an artificial middleman that exists, you're right, to try and F up Netflix's game in this market. They don't exist for a good reason.
Well, couldn't you argue that their existence is kind of similar to why Hulu exists in the States?
Even Hulu's now doing some originals.
Yeah, they're doing originals, but they are owned by, the telcos.
Well, the thing is, they're owned by the telcos and the networks, which in the United States became one and the same, somewhat like here.
Not quite as bad as here, but
not quite as bad in some ways, worse in others, because when you're rolling into the same company, like a gigantic movie studio, like that starts to screw with some of your behavior. Remember, Disney is ABC.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I know.
We need to get that Star Wars ESPN synergy going.
That's another thing. Star Wars Episode 7 is going to be on Netflix Canada, but not on Netflix in any other country due to glorious technicalities. I hope that finally shuts up people who keep complaining about Canadian Netflix being inferior, which is simply not true at all. We get lots of great stuff on Netflix Canada.
By the way, these are all all that great stuff that is on Netflix Canada instead of other Netflixes is all the more reason that Shomi and Crave are boned.
There's still a lot of gaps that they could fill. I mean, I think there's especially if one of them actually did start a free ad-based version of their service,
that would be huge.
I think that would be pretty big, especially if they keep their subscribed version ad-free, because then it would essentially be better than Hulu. But
yes.
I mean, you have situations like these JoJo's release and the Parasite dub release where, they could very easily be filling this gap, but they're not. And I feel like, maybe it is time for people to start pushing them to air anime. Maybe, again, I've always felt up to this point that doing that would be like hurting Netflix, but I don't really get that feeling anymore.
Well, then very shortly here, it seems like Netflix is going to, that's another thing that they can easily throw money at. And an anime co-pro is cheap compared to any of the live action stuff they've been doing. So given that kind of thing where it's like pretty soon you're not just going to be dealing with, already they're dealing with Netflix on one front. Don't just leave yourself completely open. At least try and be that gap filler in this market.
I've noticed that Netflix is really talking up the possibilities of co-proing anime. In a few of the articles you'll read about their Japanese expansion, apparently that's an angle they're trying to take. And I think it's going to blow up in their face. I don't think they're going to pull it off. I mean, just look at how the Seven Deadly Sins has been handled up to this point. It was nowhere to be seen when it was airing in Japan. Netflix apparently had it and they weren't simulcasting it. And they waited until apparently a whole dub was produced before they'd even put everything on, assuming that people only want to binge watch it. But that's not how people typically watch anime now. They want to watch the simulcast airing as they go along. It's like they've misunderstood how it works from the Western angle. I can't imagine how much they're going to misunderstand, the otaku market in Japan, which is like naturally resistant to any kind of foreign entity.
Yeah. Well, I think they could learn it, but they'd have to start poaching people, and I'm not sure if they've been working things from that angle. And it'd be it will not be an easy road to sow. I think Crunchyroll would have a better chance at co-proing and running that in Japan, frankly.
Isn't that what they're doing though? I read an announcement. I can't quote it. I read it a couple days ago, but it said that they're in contact with studios in Japan and they want to produce their own anime. And they were asked directly, like, are you co-producing it or are you just kind of funding it? And it was ambiguously sort of left up in the air. They're like, yeah, we're going to fund some studios that just want the funding. We'll do that. But then, some studios are down with us co-producing. So we're going to try that angle as well without actually explicitly stating which way they were going to go.
They've started a joint venture with Sumitomo Corporation in Japan to create co-production projects. We'll see how that goes. Back to the topic of geoblocking. There were 2 shows this season that didn't wind up accessible in Canada, or rather shows that were accessible in the US that did not wind up being accessible in Canada. One of them, of course, was from Viz. It was the new series K Return of Kings, which is my understanding, it's not a sequel to the original K series, but a follow-up to the movie.
Which was very confusing, by the way, because I watched the original series, didn't know that a movie came out, and went into the second season, legally on YouTube or something, and I had no clue what
Unfortunately,
the hell was going on.
there is no legal option for watching this, but we're not going to talk about that. The movie actually did get released in Canada, interestingly.
Really?
Yeah, despite the fact that the first series was not made legally available to stream. So, and then like a few months later, the Naruto The Last movie did not come out in Canada. And then of course we saw like you mentioned earlier, the Bolt movie they dramatically underestimated how many people would want to see that. So, I think we're seeing a kind of uneven trend with the way that these Viz movie releases are being handled. I did watch a couple episodes of the first K because it is on Netflix now. Yeah, as far as I can tell, that show doesn't actually seem to have any kind of premise.
Nope.
I like nothing that I can nail down at all. It has no sort of distinguishing elements in any way. I can't, or at least no good ones. I could list off all the cliche garbage in it, but it's been very popular apparently.
They did a really good job when they made this show at just creating every single character trope that exists to bring in people who like the Fujoshis, to bring in people who like sword fights, to bring in people, and by people, of course, we mean like women mostly. They
got the sort of prestigious high school filled with inexplicably beautiful people.
Yeah.
Which was parodied brilliantly in Osomatsu-san, which is another.
Yes,
which
let's talk about that.
We'll get to that in a minute. But it's got that. It's got the Fujo bait. It's got naked cat girl running for no apparent reason.
But when they stick in an underage, like 8-year-old girl.
Oh yeah. So they got that, and they kind of have the urban street angle, which is very sloppily implemented, versus whatever the hell was going on. Nothing really seemed to fit together. But apparently it was. They stacked it up in a way that people latched to, and it got a movie, and then the movie got a sequel in the form of the new TV show. But we can't watch it here. Definitely not a big loss from what No,
it's not. No.
Yeah, well, if you were one of the people who caught the movie in theaters in Canada, I guess too bad. You're not going to be able to watch the new season legally, at least not until it's out on DVD. So another one that is not accessible here in Canada, Chivalry of a Failed Knight. Which is yet another magical high school show.
This season's kind of thick with that.
This one, by all accounts, seems to be pretty bad. I'm not really concerned about that. What concerns me more is the fact that this show was actually licensed by Sentai, and they made it Hulu exclusive. Not only Hulu exclusive, but the first week of it airs that you actually have to watch it on Hulu Plus. Which means that even if you're using a VPN, you're not going to be able to watch it in Canada unless you're insane enough to be subscribing to Hulu Plus while living in Canada and accessing Hulu through a VPN. I don't know. I think that sets a pretty bad precedent.
Well, it's also just annoying that, again, Hulu can... I know for a fact that Hulu could turn on the geoblocking and it runs some kind of ads or something here. It's not... Yes, there is the economics of having your ad buy and set up like that, but I mean... You'd still be making more than zero. At the moment, you're making nothing not running it in Canada, and you'd make something on it because streaming's cheap. So give us the week after with ads, please.
I know Hulu can. They've done it before.
Yeah.
No,
and I think there's a bunch of documentaries they have. Like there's some of their stuff that they have gotten global rights for, and so they turn it on globally. So it's not that they can't do it at all.
I didn't realize that they made some of their documentaries accessible.
I think there was some. I want to say that there's some stuff that they've gotten the whole set for, because there's times where I've hit something that's geoblocked and they're like, "But look at this. This isn't geoblocked." Now this is a while back. They may have bailed from that, but I mean, the fact that they used to be able to do it kind of says a lot.
But it sets kind of a bad precedent, because up until this point, Sentai would usually make their stuff available on their Anime Network streaming platform, which, if you don't already know, you can access everything on that website for free and in high definition with no advertising, which is really actually pretty great. But I have suspected for a while that that platform probably isn't going to last much longer. They're probably going to partner with other companies to handle their streaming moving forward, because I think we're going to see an end eventually of this idea of companies handling both home video distribution and streaming. Funimation will probably be the last stubborn.
I think Funimation won't be the last holdout. I think Funimation is the only one of these companies that's doing home video that's also large enough to pivot, and they will. They're big enough that they can say that, okay, DVD isn't where we make money, fine, we'll make it on streaming. They aren't necessarily pivoting like I think as wide as they should, because they're making a pivot to streaming in North America, while Crunchyroll is saying we are going to be for this particular medium of anime, the streaming source globally in as many markets as we can get. But like they're big enough to do it. Sentai, anybody else who was in the U.S. previously never had the war chest to like make this possible.
Of course, Viz essentially has moved away from doing their own streaming stuff. I mean, the old Neon Alley shut down. That was a huge misfire, and they've pretty much, the reason they're putting all their stuff on Hulu is they've essentially partnered with Hulu because they're not going to invest in another platform. These companies are still viewing Crunchyroll as a competitor rather than someone that they can work with. But as it stands right now, they don't see Hulu as a competitor. They see Hulu as a company to partner with. While they're sorting all this out, they're more likely going to gravitate towards that company. And if the trend continues, we're going to see more cases like what we're seeing with Magic Boob School show number 3.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the problem going forward. There's no way around that. They're not going to view Crunchyroll as not a competitor anytime soon.
Yeah.
They're not going to view them as an ally. I don't think, frankly, Crunchyroll sells themselves that way in a lot of ways.
True.
Certainly at one point they were directly antagonistic, but even as they've gone legit, they're still sort of antagonistic to the old model, whereas Hulu can ostensibly, because it's also all old media people, a little bit more understanding of it.
Interestingly, if you follow Crunchyroll's PR people on Twitter, they've talked about how they actually are trying to get Sailor Moon available in Canada through Crunchyroll, but apparently not all parties are on board, is their sort of official response to that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can believe it in a heartbeat, man.
Yeah. But we did kind of luck out with one Viz title this season. One Punch Man. We got bailed out by Daisuke on that one. They saw fit to distribute that one worldwide, except for Japan and China. So One Punch Man actually is available on Daisuke for free in HD if you make an account and without ads on the day of release. And I am pretty thankful because that show is really fucking awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Carl, did you get a chance to watch any One Punch Man?
There's some clips, but I'm digging what I'm seeing. I just haven't had the time because I've been sick and busy at work. But the fact that Daisuke, that sort of speaks to another player in this, which is if Daisuke just starts taking off the top all the cream best shows like One Punch Man, everybody's in trouble.
I'm not sure if I agree that the Anime Consortium of Japan is something that the other streaming platforms in North America should fear. It's great that they picked it up, but it's not really the best platform. Their app is garbage. Yeah, Daisuke has its ups and downs, but One Punch Man was definitely a good title for spreading the good word of anime to other countries, which seems to be the whole purpose of that sort of endeavor. I would imagine that most people have checked it out at this point because it's such a high profile series.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not aware, it was directed by Shingo Natsume, who was the series director of Space Dandy. Not Shinichiro Watanabe, of course, was sort of a supervising director, but Shingo Natsume actually did kind of the
day-to-day
the kind of day-to-day stuff, and he also directed, I think, a couple of the best episodes, specifically that one in the middle where QT falls in love and then grows into a giant QT at the end and battles that other robot. And One Punch Man is basically uses that whole like that whole visual sensibility as its foundation, and the results
it lends
are just
itself
glorious.
to it.
Yeah,
It's a show that's like, this should be a very visual show because it's about a superhero. Like, of course, this should be big and set piece driven. So Natsume is a natural fit for that. And I'm hard pressed to think of many other directors currently who have that sense of humor but big action scope.
I mean, normally I say I'm sick of things that are, that deconstruct superheroes, but I mean, this does it in such a
unabrasive way.
Such an unabrasive way, such a fun way.
It's not so much a deconstruction; it's just more like, here's a more practical thought about it.
Have you guys seen Gintama?
Bits.
Oh, I've seen bits. I know that the directors who have handled that have gone on to do some really, really great comedy. They did the first director of Gintama did Good Luck Girl.
Just when I was watching One Punch Man, not in terms of the violence or the action, but just in terms of the comedy, the humor in the show, I found it pretty similar to that of Gintama, which I know Gintama can kind of be hit and miss with a lot of people, but I think that has more to do with the obscure Japanese references it makes. Yeah. But I would definitely say to anyone listening, if you watch Gintama and you enjoy that, you'll like this as well. But
if I was going to say any recent title that I can pretty much universally recommend to almost, anybody who likes animation, is like One Punch Man, is it? Like, I have a hard time imagining people not finding something to enjoy about it. But speaking of the Gintama director, the first director of Gintama, again, he went on to do Good Luck Girl or Binbo Gomiga, and he did direct the show we mentioned earlier, Osomatsu-san.
Yes, he did.
Yes, and that I was pretty impressed with that one. Brittany, what were your thoughts on Osomatsu-san?
It was perfect. Okay, I had no clue what to expect. I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, it's great.
Or heard of it. Like the original anime was like the 80s?
The 60s. They did a remake in the 80s. They're kind of ignoring it in this.
And yeah, it does an amazing job of deconstructing, anime tropes, genres. I made a list at one point just for fun, of how many different anime manga titles that it actually referenced in the show, and I think it hit somewhere around like 20 different references in like that tiny 19-minute window.
What I really liked about it was just, I thought its level of self-awareness was quite surprising. Like you have these characters who have just been suddenly resurrected from this show from the 1960s. Yet they're fully aware of the fact that their values are outdated. They're fully aware of what modern audiences expect. So I mean, they don't waste their time with any kind of tired fish out of water jokes, which seems like the obvious route to take something like that. The problem is that they're trying to overcompensate to the point where they're almost extinguishing themselves.
Yeah.
It seemed like a really refreshing approach to that kind of thing for me in that first episode, and then the subsequent episodes when we see the actual way that they're evolving the Osomatsu-san image for the 21st century. It's great. You in the original show you had these 6 sextuplets who were just sitting around the house all day doing nothing, and now it just kind of shifted to them in adulthood, continuing to sit around the house all day doing nothing. But this problem of being unemployed suddenly becomes an issue, and it does a really good job of sort of translating the 60s sense of irreverence that the show apparently had to a modern sense of irreverence. I thought they handled that transition really, really well. Also, you can go into this show like not knowing, like you can go into this show not even knowing what the original Osomatsu-kun show from the 1960s was. It lays everything out very clearly.
Yeah, that first episode, the first like 5 minutes of it was just like you didn't need to know anything going into that show. You knew everything that you needed to know.
Yeah.
And then they just took you on a ride, and man, I loved it so much. I was such a huge fan. Like,
yeah, I am
so good.
I don't think it's likely that one's going to get a physical release, but it's I'm glad we can watch. I'm glad we can watch it. It's good stuff. Also, it's kind of unfortunate that Crunchyroll, they always give a translated version of the titles they carry. I don't know if it's their policy or the policy of the Japanese distributors. On Crunchyroll, it's listed as Mr. Osomatsu, which is kind of unfortunate because it sort of kills the whole joke where the old show was called Osomatsu-kun, and the new show, as it very specifically states throughout the time, it says Osomatsu-san. So
I get it.
Yeah.
I like that.
So yeah, Osomatsu-san was really great. Brittany, you checked out a few other shows. What else did you like this season, or not like?
Okay. Well, I did not like Comet Lucifer.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. It was just really bad.
It wasn't terrible, but it was just, it was very unremarkable.
Yes.
The comparison that I've seen people making to this is comparing it to Eureka 7.
What?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I find it's kind of derivative of it in a few ways. With the character types and mysterious artifacts that's linked to some strange history in a strange alternate Earth.
Which would be great if my issue with this show was I watched the first 2 episodes and by the end of the second episode, I had no clue what was going on. I didn't know who anybody was. I didn't know anything about the world. I just sat there and I'm like, you've literally given me nothing to attach to or care about in this show. So I won't be watching it past the second episode. There's although the alternate world looked pretty, but that was about it.
It's a very pretty show, but there's just nothing to really sink your teeth into, at least not in those first 2 episodes. I mean, it's just so...
I thought we were done with mech shows like that. I feel like that was such an O's thing to have.
It's a very...
These mech shows that go nowhere initially and give you nothing to care about and have no flair.
That's the problem, Carl, is that this is almost kind of... I know something like Eureka 7 obviously is very derivative of things that had come before it. You don't have to pick it apart too far to see the influences from Evangelion and Fooly Cooly and things like that, but it's still kind of established its own voice. Whereas this is being derivative of all those derivative shows from the 2000s, of all those kind of nothing bland mecha shows with
Fafner.
Yeah, it's it's embracing that as the norm to achieve in mech anime, and that is a serious mistake.
Which is a pity, because if I were going to rip off any mech show from the O's, it'd be Stelvia, because that was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And you care about the cast pretty much out the gate, and it's a huge cast, and they managed to give the huge cast development, and it's it really underlines it's not that there's an excuse to have these things that kind of are mealy mouthed and soft and go nowhere as a mech show. You can have big ideas and communicate them quickly and efficiently. It's not a constraint of the medium. It's bad work.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
just don't watch it.
Yeah, it's just all those it's all the worst elements of bland world building and uninteresting characters that plagued us last decade. Again, the problem is that it still thinks that's the way to do things, and it draws its influences from all the wrong places. So maybe it'll go somewhere neat. Who knows? I am not that interested in following that one further.
Okay, so moving on, something else. Can I say surprisingly, I watched Attack on Titan Junior High expecting to just roll my eyes and hate it a lot, but I actually enjoyed it, which is probably not going to be everyone's feelings, and I don't think you can really enjoy the show if you haven't seen the original Attack on Titan series, but I liked it because it was basically a parody of itself, kind of making fun of itself, and some good jokes, some good humor, and really short too, which I think helped make it likable.
I checked out the first episode. It was pretty funny. If you're a fan of the show, if you're like a hardcore fan of the show, you actually will probably get a lot out of it. It kind of repeats lines of dialogue from the original in ways you don't expect. I did like the idea of the kids being in one school and the Titans being in another school that was right next to it. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, see, this is what I mean. They do a pretty good job at kind of parodying themselves, making fun of how serious the original show takes itself.
Yeah, the contrast of they use the same soundtrack as the original show too, which is it's a nice touch. I mean, it's a great soundtrack, but when you put it against these comedic visuals, it actually has a pretty great effect. I'm probably not going to follow it, But yeah, if you're a big fan of the show, that's not a bad one at all.
You guys covered the new Gundam show.
Yeah.
Which, is it weird that, like, I'm the only one who was not totally sold on it? Admittedly, I'm not a mecha fan, okay? But I grew up with Gundam Wing, and I've read numerous Gundam titles. But something about Iron Blood Orphans, I'm really hesitant. I guess maybe just because they're using child orphans, and I feel like that's kind of still a really relevant, serious topic that anime is not exactly the best platform for that kind of commentary on it. I don't know.
I think it's tough because contextually it's one of the, by virtue of its strength as a medium, if you deal with it in that context, there's a lot of people who may not have otherwise paid attention to it will now be exposed to it. And it will really depend, as the series go forward, how that's handled. Because there's been series that have made that the central point of the show, like Now and Then, Here and There. That is a show that's simply about child soldiers and war orphans, and they use a fantasy setting to give it a little distance, but they kind of dissolve that as the series goes on and make it pretty plain that, like, yeah, this is, I can't remember who the director was, but he did it after seeing stuff about child soldiers. And,
it was actually Akitaro Daichi.
Yeah, it's Daichi, who normally does all these wonderful comedy things. And he did it basically as like, I saw child soldiers in the world and I need to communicate this in a medium that I have command over. And that, IBO can do that. And if that's brought up in the context of Gundam in the right way, it underlines something that in a sense Gundam has taken very flippantly throughout, most of its history, which is, Amuro raised a teenager, a young teenager, and he's suddenly in the middle of this war and he's sad about it, but they don't really get into like how effed up that is.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been in various measures ignored or glorified throughout Gundam's history. And this is a possibility to like maybe have a more introspective moment. We'll see whether they get there, especially because, they only have 26 episodes and it feels like there's a lot going on for them to deal with. But that to me is not necessarily so much a caution point as maybe Sunrise is going to try and own up to something that they've glossed over in the past. So I'm kind of curious to see where they, to me, that's another thing that I'm like, I got to see what they're going to do with this.
I mean, on one hand, anime is a great medium for exploring things like oppression and child soldiers, because you have that sort of layer of unreality that it can sort of operate behind and make it more palatable. It also,
well, it can get you across kind of an uncanny valley where you just couldn't watch it. And then you get to that deeper understanding. Like, I think, like, it'd be incredibly hard to do a film like Grave of the Fireflies in live action because it would just be brutal.
Exactly.
It'd just be on brutal, whereas you can soften over the top of that a little with the animation to then actually say, like, but no, really, it's fucked up and brutal.
Yeah.
And you can actually finally get people to that realization in a way that would be very few, if any, live action director could make work. Because you'd also then need to have incredible child actors to sell it.
But on the other hand, I mean, Gundam, is like an afternoon wide appeal show that
I'm actually kind of surprised how brutal it's been so far for the time slot it's in. The fact that they had no question have had like, these kids kill people.
Yeah.
In a kid's time slot. I think that's the other thing is they're not pulling any punches with the time slot. They're being like, no, this is a messed up scenario. This is violent. And I don't think they've far from glorifying it, have much less so than any other Gundam series in the past been like, no, war is not. They're getting to the war is hell shit kind of out of the gate with this.
With that opening scene, right?
Just like, we're open the show with murder and it's kids doing it. That's incredible for a Gundam series because it really does underline, like, strictly speaking, we've done this before, but we had it under the whole guise of woo robots.
Yeah.
Oh wait, it's still killing people.
That's a little more realistic.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on moving forward.
Well, yeah, it's
really
a Gundam show, so it's like it could completely implode in the next 2 episodes, or it could be a masterpiece, and you never know. Like a Gundam series are like the last thing I'd ever place a bet on in terms of quality.
So, also on the topic of revivals, Carl, we watched the first episode of Young Blackjack.
That was dope. I like that.
Was it good?
was.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it had definitely the elements of that made Tezuka's original comic work. Plus, they'll find any excuse for him to take off his shirt and show off his like stitched together chiseled body, which is
Now I'm
kind of funny.
disappointed I skipped it.
It's this is a season for man service, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
One thing I didn't like the political aspect of it though.
I think it's something that like you either ignore it entirely or you have to cope with the fact that that was in play in Japan at the time you would have had blackjack as a student.
I'm not put off by the fact that they're depicting the student protests from the 1960s that were going on. I mean, they portrayed in such a negative light. They make the protesters seem so unreasonable. If somebody wants to communicate their political beliefs through their artistic work, I mean, that's fine enough. But in the case of Young Blackjack, or the writer and artist who did the original manga, are taking somebody else's IP and sort of inputting or inserting their own controversial politics into it. I think that's kind of a shitty thing to do, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd have to see more of the show to see what they do with it, because I felt a lot of, while they were showing, I don't feel the characters that were protesting were necessarily coming off as that obstinate.
Maybe they're going.
When I feel like a lot of where that contextualization was coming from were the people who were on the other side of it, and they were trying to show this is how, to some extent, and maybe this was not intended, or maybe this was intended and it didn't read well, but they were trying to show this was what the powers that be were thinking of some of these people. I think there's a bit of that.
Maybe they're going somewhere with it. I don't know. We'll see. But given, the politics we've been seeing in a lot of other anime lately, like Gate and Irregular at Magic High School, I'm not going to get my hopes up too far that we're going to see anything particularly progressive with the way that they depict this. I could be wrong, but
I'll be curious to see where they take it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure their anime as a industry is drawing in the people who are always going to be taking the that tack, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think in terms of giving you that flavor of what a young blackjack would be like was good. I think that like ignoring the politics or that aside, it gave me what I expect out of a blackjack show for sure.
I guess they're just trying to, dissect that idea of what would make him go rogue, make him become an unlicensed doctor. Maybe his journey towards that will be interesting. Obviously, I could read the manga if I really wanted to know. I'm sure many of you already know the answer, but we'll see where that goes, I guess. Did either of you, or Brittany, you watched Concrete Revolutio as well?
Yes, I did. I was hoping you would bring that up. I actually, while I was watching it, I thought of you. I was like, this is Jesse's jam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought, I don't know whether you liked it or not, but just, I guess the aesthetics of the show, just, I don't know, it made me think that it would be something you would at least, give a chance to. But I really liked it.
I liked it. The visuals were fantastic. I've only watched the first episode so far. I wanted to watch the second one, but I haven't. I didn't find time, unfortunately. I found the first episode, despite its great visuals, to be incomprehensible. I could not understand what the hell was going on. And it almost seemed, I don't know if it was deliberate or kind of an oversight, because it was just jumping from, just the way it was edited, it was jumping from thing to thing so quickly that I wasn't able to process anything that was happening and really put the pieces together. It almost seemed like, in a lot of ways, I was just like, is this show just trying to make me throw my hands in the air and say, what the hell is going on?
I think it has
but at the same time, comfort you by assuring you that you don't really, what's going on isn't important anyway, so just enjoy being baffled.
I totally was able to completely follow along with it. I will say though, because this show, what it does is it jumps from the present to the past and back to the present and back to the past again with no segues, and they don't do they don't do a very good job of making you realize you're going from the past to the present and vice versa. So it definitely can get confusing. But I didn't have any problems following along with it, and I actually really enjoyed how fast paced it was. It kind of just threw you in there, and you're kind of like hanging on and just going along for the ride to see where it ends up.
There were a lot of little. I did catch a lot of great subtle touches. Like they seem to be building off of like pulp popular culture with a lot of their themes. I like their use of like halftone dots in a lot of the visual aesthetics to sort of hone in on that classic comic book style, but combine it with, Western and Japanese sensibilities when it comes to pulp literature. I think that's a really good approach. But I'm gonna follow it and see where it goes.
I mean, at any rate, it's really crazy, and it's definitely got that kind of Bones signature flair to it. But I would recommend it. It's really, I thought it was really good.
Who directed it?
Seiji Mizujima.
Oh, wow, yeah, Seiji Mizujima, the FMA 2003 guy directed that.
The Mobile Suit Gundam 00 guy, the Hanamaru Kindergarten guy.
Yeah.
He's got. I mean, I think that's probably me. If anybody's going to make it work, it's a guy with diversity under this belt, and like he's done everything from like Full Metal Alchemist to Hanamaru Kindergarten. So he's done like goofy, dumb comedies. He's done serious action stuff and stuff that mixes it. So,
and
seems like a good place to start with.
And he was the real star of Shirobako.
Well, he was.
Yeah.
He is. I mean, actually, given the context of Shirobako and how they basically made a character about him, I'm like, yeah, that guy could direct this show.
Of all the anime directors they could pick, they picked him to be, the director in Shirobako. So I guess that says a lot.
Though it does not necessarily speak good things about this show's quality going forward. Too jiggly, not jiggly enough.
Yeah.
well, let's. I guess we'll just have to catch up to those 4 episodes now, 3 or 4 episodes, and just
we'll work out whether
best.
he's already been locked in the writer's cellar.
Any other shows worth noting?
Worth noting.
Can I say this is worth noting in the sense that you should just avoid it at all costs? My friend made me watch Diabolic Lovers 2. Like, just the first 2 episodes that were out, and I will never get those, 30, 40 minutes back. I feel like I died inside. A part of me died having watched this show. What is attractive about a guy calling you Bitch-chan?
Pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
What is attractive about a guy saying, oh, she's just a stupid cow. Come on, cow-chan. And I'm like, it got worse. How? It's reverse harem with vampires who are incredibly abusive.
Yeah.
But people are into it. It's based off of a game, and I have not played the game, but while I was in Japan, one of the people living in my apartment played it, and I didn't understand. I read the dialogue, and it's just as bad as the translation here. I don't know. Basically, they just take all of the worst parts of Twilight and all of that horrible possessiveness that you get in adult smut novels and amplify that by 1,000,000, and that is Diabolic Lovers in the worst ways possible.
It reminds me of the of that bit in Watamote where the lead character is listening to that Yandere Boys CD. And it's that kind of that's their audience, is people who have those kind of weird, not right necessarily expectations.
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely underlies some troubling themes with that genre. But I mean, it's what a lot of people are looking for, like it or not, I guess.
Speaking of troubling themes, I guess. So I've been trying to watch some of the little short stuff, the things that are running in 7 minutes, and I watched while I've been laid up, because it's we'll wait for 7 minutes, I'll watch something and I'll go back to sleep. Being sick is fun. So I watched a bit of a few episodes of Hackadol, which is one of these I think direct to mobile series that Crunchyroll's picked up.
Oh yeah.
And it is goofy as hell, And it's not good. It's not a great anime, but I mean, when you get to the third episode, there is some really obvious Eva jokes and parodies and stuff, and it really does underline the fact it's like, yeah, this show is just kind of it's pretty empty, but at least it knows it is and is having fun along the way. So on that note, it works as it's a show that if you tried to do 22 with these characters, it'd be just grating. You couldn't do 22 episodes of that a week, but 7, a minute and 30 of which is the opening and another 30 seconds of which is the end. So really 5 minutes of show. Perfect. Like it is a nice little gag anime. And I feel like lately I've enjoyed that stuff more in some ways in the past seasons. Like, there's that minute-long show, Wakakozake, that Jesse and I have been watching and that we need to finish up, which is just literally, an office lady goes to a bar and eats a food. Like, that's all the show is. But it's all it needs to be.
I'm kicking myself for almost missing that show. Almost missed out on it.
I mean, the only part about that show that sucks is it just really reminds you of how great food is in Japan, and you just want to go back to Japan and eat great food. Like, it's a show that you watch as somebody who's visited and be like, damn it, I want to eat what that person's eating.
Yeah, there's a live-action version as well, and it just got renewed the live-action version got renewed for a second season.
I kind of want to see that, but I don't think anybody's got that above board, do they?
I can't even find it below board, to be perfectly honest.
Jeez.
Sad days.
Yeah.
I can't watch my food show. My food show with a food show. What?
There's no shortage of food shows these days, though.
Yeah, true. That's a trend in anime I don't mind. If that's going to be the trope, let that be the trope.
Better than incest.
Right.
What? It is. It's a much better.
Well, no, yes. No. Yeah, a lot of things are. Made shows were better than that. The sleazy adults, like, oriented magical girl shows were better than that.
When you watch the first episode of an anime, let's be honest, it's rarely ever so engaging that you commit to watching the rest of the show, right? It's just like any new TV show, especially with anime, it's never like an episodic formula. It's always serialized. You have to stick around for the full, like, till the end to get anything out of it. So I mean, shows can always surprise you. Sometimes they start terrible. Like Akame ga Kill. I don't know if you guys watched that, but it had a horrible start, and I don't know why I stuck around with it, but around the 6th or 7th episode, it just kind of kicked into overdrive, and then it just went up from there. So you never know with shows, right? With anime in particular.
Yeah. It's tough with anime because on one hand it's easier to justify the get over the bad episode hump than it used to be, when that used to be like, buy 2 $30 discs that are garbage, and then buy another 4 to 6 $20 discs that are actually going to be really good. Now that it's streaming, it's like, hey, this is part of one of your subscriptions. You know, like, it's a little easier to justify it at this point. But I still hate to, like, tell people that. It's still one of these things. It's like, I really like shows that it can at least start off somewhat compellingly, that you're not just kind of like treading water until it like kicks off. Because, I think it's like Lucky Star's a great example of that. It's like when it's under that first director, it's just kind of treading water, and then okay, it's great. But I'm like, I can't then recommend that to a lot of folks. I can't it's part of why it's so easy to recommend a Cowboy Bebop, because it does in one episode you're already getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. Yes, they haven't introduced every character. There is those ongoing threads, but in one episode you're like, oh shit, I know what this is. We know where we are now. And there are shows that I do think pull that off.
One Punch Man.
Osomatsu-san.
Yeah.
This season has some good examples of it, but I mean, I even think stuff like Chihaya Furu. In one episode, you kind of got a good idea of like, all right, I know what we're doing with this. I know what we're supposed to get out of this. My Love Story, same thing. Like, I think there's a lot of shoujo shows that really get their thesis in 22. So it's hard for me to say like, well, this other show is going to take 6 times that.
I don't know. With My Love Story, I thought, based on, like, after the first 2 episodes, I thought it was going to go the same route that Nozaki-kun did. I'm really glad it didn't, because that would have been excruciating to watch for 24 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, though it was great to watch that for 12 episodes in Nozaki-kun, but I mean, that was one of those rare, it's so rare that you get 4 Coma shows that, like, are well adapted.
Yeah.
Normally those just eat it, when they go to animation, and instead it fit perfectly. Like, it felt like they had adapted a manga, not a 4 Coma. So, on that basis, it's all like, and this is what's tough about, any new season, is just like, you'll see something and it really does, like, eat it its first episode or a few, and you just drop it, and it's like, yeah, someone else is going to have to, who has patience and time, can get over that hump. And I'll loop back to it if there isn't something really good running currently. I hate to say it, but it's true. It's what it is.
Okay, well, I think that about does it for this episode. So, Britt, Carl, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, Jesse.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hey, so there's been an update on something we talked about in the show. Because this episode wasn't long enough already, I figured I'd just tack this on to the end. I mentioned before that Chivalry of a Failed Knight was being simulcast exclusively on Hulu. Well, it looks like the streaming company Viewster has bailed us out on that one. They announced just last week that in addition to the UK and Ireland, they'll be simulcasting the show in Canada. This could suggest that Sentai is willing to work with potential competitors. I don't know. We'll see. One thing we also forgot to mention in this episode was that Now and Then, Here and There, the classic series that Carl brought up, has actually recently resurfaced online, but also as a Hulu exclusive. So, Viewster, if you're listening, maybe you could bail us out on that one too. Anyway, thanks to Carl and Brittany for coming on the show, and thanks yet again to Carl for producing all the awesome music you hear on this podcast. It's all taken from his recent LP, Packet Flood, which you can purchase at his website at ultraclystron.com. If you follow the show and you're not subscribing to it, please consider doing so on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts, and if you can, leave a review. If you know anybody who might like this show, please recommend it to them. So until next time, see you again!